Good morning. And good morning to everyone online. Welcome to Seattle Unity. Please stand as you are able. You will notice some lyrics up here on the screen. Not normal, but we're going to be doing this for Christmas to make it easier to sing along. So please join us.
Angels we have heard on high, sweetly singing o'er the plains, and the mountains in reply, echoing their joyous strains. Gloria in excelsis Deo.
Get one more verse up here.
1, 2, 3. Shepherds, why this jubilee? Why your joyous strains prolong? Say what may the tidings be, which inspire your heavenly song. Gloria in excelsis Deo. Gloria in excelsis Deo.
Let us pray.
And so we take a moment to turn our attention within as we open to our opening statement. So let's affirm it together. There is but one presence and one power in my life and in the universe, God the good omnipotence.
Thank you, and please join us for one more verse.
Good morning, and welcome to Seattle Unity, both in-house and at home. So let's turn to our prayer for the future. Divine love flows through Seattle Unity. As our congregation grows, we are blessed with deep and lasting friendships. We share creative ideas that spark new ways of being. We give generously from a place of abundance. We are empowered to do good in the world. Can I get an amen? Amen. All right. So for those who are watching at home, if you'd like to type in your name and where you're watching from, that would be great. Also, any prayer requests that you have. And I'd like to know, is there anybody with us today who's here for the first time? If so, could you raise your hand? And we'd like to welcome you. Thank you for being with us today. 3, 4. Is anybody from out of town? Where are you from? Bloomington, North Carolina. Welcome. Oh, Wilmington. Wilmington or Bloomington? Wilmington. Yeah, where Richard and Maureen were. Yeah. Anybody else from out of town? Terry, I don't think that counts. Vashon Island doesn't count. So just a couple of announcements. Today, the men's group is hosting our Christmas brunch. So they go all out. It's pancakes, bacon, eggs. It's the whole 9 yards. It's wonderful. Please come upstairs and have a fabulous brunch. It's $15 and less for kids. So come on up following that. I also want to let you know, announcements next Sunday, we're having a cookie decorating following the service. Now, you don't have to bring the cookies. You don't have to bring the decorating. We're going to have all of it. But if you guys have any kids in your life, bring your kids because, you know, it's fun to decorate cookies. So we're going to do that. And the Youth Ed is hosting that family-friendly event. Also, Christmas Eve candlelighting service is at 7 p.m. It's always an amazingly beautiful, inspiring service, so we invite you to come to that as well. And then finally, if you remember on Halloween, we took a trip to Recompose, the composting for humans funeral parlor. Whatever. Anyway, the Seattle Times did an article because the Seattle Times was with us when we went on our tour. And so it's in today's Sunday's paper, and it's a lot of fun to read and to see our faces. So check it out. That said, our prompt for our home group, for our people watching from home, is what are your most favorite holiday traditions? And for us, let's all stand and greet one another.
have loud parts and soft parts and fast parts and slow parts and heady, thinky parts, and then parts like this that are about just making your spine move. Because pretty soon there's going to be a silent meditation. And for you to get everything out of that silent meditation, it's best if your body is awake. So this is Feliz Navidad. I encourage you to actually dance. So if you're holding your hands in front of, I don't know, you're doing the old grape leaf position here, just let them go. If you're back here, I call that my 14-year-old girl because I spent my whole 14th year with my arms like this, right? Just let that go too. I encourage you to walk out from your aisles if you want to also turn around and see people. Here we go. Feliz Navidad. Feliz Navidad. That's right. Feliz Navidad. Prospero año y felicidad. Do that again. Feliz Navidad. Oh, oh, oh. Feliz Navidad. Feliz Navidad. Prospero año y felicidad. Throw your hands up and sing it loud. I wanna wish you a Merry Christmas. I wanna wish you a Merry Christmas. I wanna wish you a Merry Christmas from the bottom of my heart. Again. I wanna wish you a Merry Christmas. I wanna wish you a Merry Christmas. I wanna wish you a Merry Christmas from the bottom of my heart. Feliz, Feliz Navidad. Harp. Feliz Navidad. This is Jared. Feliz Navidad. Prospero año y felicidad. Do it again. Feliz Navidad. Feliz Navidad. Feliz Navidad. Prospero año y felicidad. All right, like a dad at a wedding. I wanna wish you a Merry Christmas. I wanna wish you a Merry Christmas. I wanna wish you a Merry Christmas from the bottom of my heart. I wanna wish you a Merry Christmas. Yes, I wanna wish you a Merry. Yeah. I wanna wish you a Merry Christmas from the bottom of my heart. Well done. Please be seated. And if you're out of breath from that, awesome. Because it's that breath moving that's going to get the blood flowing. And it opens up the brain and the heart. We're about to turn the page into our more contemplative part of the service, so I encourage you to become comfortable in your chairs. But our first step is guided by Kathy Gorell with today's reading.
Good morning. I'm reading from Unity's 2024 Advent booklet. On this day of Advent, I am divine love, generous and courageous in thought and action. It is often said that nothing is more powerful than the power of love. In the Gospel of John, Jesus himself reminds us that he came because God so loved the world. We too are God's love made manifest. Embodying and expressing this truth is our gift to ourselves and the world. Advent is 4 weeks of spiritual preparation. Having found faith in our own Christhood and peace as we recognize that nothing can separate us from God, we ask ourselves, what would love do now? Love is seeking to be expressed in our lives. Being more courageous and generous with our love can be our own Christmas miracle. Perhaps some of your relationships need some attention and tender care. Maybe there are areas in your life or in the world that require you to put love in action. Follow your inner guidance as to what love would do now and prepare to experience the true joy of Christmas. From 1 Corinthians 13:13, and now faith, hope, and love abide, these three. And the greatest of these is love. On this day of Advent, I am divine love, generous, courageous in thought and action.
We're going to have a little bit of a time of meditation. It's a time for silence here. You may observe that in whatever way suits you best. I would encourage you to find a way to become grounded. It might be feet on the floor, it might be in your favorite yoga position. Become unencumbered, and we can drop down into the silence. The Spirit and I are one. The Spirit and I are one. Are one, are one, are one, are one. The Spirit and I are one. The Spirit and I are one. The Spirit and I are one. Are one, are one, are one, are one. The Spirit and I are one. The Spirit and I are one. The Spirit and I are one. Are one, are one, are one, are one. The Spirit and I are one. The Spirit and I are one. The Spirit and I are one. Are one, are one, are one. The Spirit and I are one. The Spirit and I are one. The Spirit and I are one.
Jared Parsons.
Thanks. So awesome. I'm so incredibly grateful for our worship arts team every week. So we are in the midst of our theme for this month, which is looking at Gen Z, or Zoomers, as they're also called, which is part of our larger annual theme of looking at the generations. It is the third week of Advent, and this week's theme is love. If you haven't gotten an Advent booklet, we have some of those still left out on the altar out there, and you're welcome to take one and continue this Advent journey with that support. And so the first week of Advent, we looked at hope and faith. We looked at the ways in which we can invite that spark of hope, which is that creative light that leads us into better and brighter futures. We talked about an understanding faith, a faith of understanding. And then last week, it was looking at how we can create peace and space for peace during that second week of Advent. And so now when we turn to love, how many times during a day or a week do you say love? We use it a lot, right? Especially in the English language, it's so used. You know, we love people, we love our pets, we love foods, right? So we use it a lot, and it shows up in a lot of different ways, and we express it in a lot of different ways. We love people we have relationships with. We love our pets. I love my Toby. We love certain foods. And I want to kind of shift things and invite us to look at love in a way that's maybe not top of mind, and that is as your divine nature, as an inherent divine quality that is the truth of your being. It's the truth of every person's being. It is In Unity, we talk about the 12 powers. It's one of our 12 powers. That divine quality, that divine essence, our very nature is love. And so Charles Fillmore, one of the co-founders of Unity, he talked about love and wrote about love a lot. When I was kind of looking through this, it's pretty much in every one of his books. And so he defines it in different ways, in different places, at different times. But so I combined two from a couple different writings. And he talks about divine love is impersonal, which might kind of set some people like cold, like, what? But he goes on to say, it loves for the sake of loving. It is not concerned with what or who it loves, nor if there is a return of love. In expression, it is the power that joins and binds together the universe and everything in it. Love is harmonizing. It is a constructive power. Where it is made active in consciousness, it conserves substance and reconstructs, rebuilds, and restores. So when he was talking about this binding energy, this nature of love, I also like to think of it as like the sparkly, sticky super glue, right? That could be another definition. That's kind of my working definition right now. So it does have the power to heal and restore. And in 1 John 4:16, we hear God is love, and those who abide in love abide in God, and God abides in them. And so this gets to that very heart and idea that we are the very nature and essence of love. And then we get to go forth and choose how we express it in the world, how we express it to others, how we express it to ourselves. So as I was kind of exploring this, I was asking the question, well, how do I stay centered in love throughout the day, throughout the week? And that, of course, took me to what pulls me away from staying centered in love, right? I was sort of, because love is sort of this abstract, it's sort of amorphous, sort of hard to get a hold on. And so when I was thinking about it and reflecting on it, I said, well, I kind of get pulled out of my center and being centered in my heart and in love when there's fear, when there's anxiety, when I'm worrying, when I'm judging, when the critical mind gets active. Anybody else relate? Yeah. So it's very easy, right? In our day-to-day lives, we listen to the news, we have a challenge with a loved one, a friend, there's turmoil in our relationships. And immediately we go to our head, we go to that reactive part, and it's kind of like, where's the love? Well, it's still there. It's still present. So my question is, what would your day be like if you started it with affirming, I am the presence of love? And just kind of take that in and say that to yourself right now. And I'm just curious how that lands. Is there any kind of inner kind of resistance or reaction to that? It's kind of a good check, a kind of good thermometer of kind of where our internal world is at. And throughout the day, what if you were to set a little timer and the beginning of each hour, you just kind of reflected and kind of came back to center and said, I am the presence of love. You are that presence of love, even in the midst of personalities and challenges. So when I was looking at this and thinking of this concept of love being so abstract, and how do we, we can have the mental concept of it, but how do we anchor it, like the feeling of it? Because that's where the power is when we can actually not only have a concept, but then we can bring a full embodiment to it. And I was thinking about HeartMath Institute, and I know a number of people are familiar with HeartMath. Some people have heard of it, some haven't. But for decades, they have been doing research on the incredible wisdom and intelligence and power of our hearts. And the fact that in an instant, when we activate that intelligence, when we center in our hearts, we can change our biology like that, and we impact the people around us. And so they have been doing this research, and they've been training people on ways to kind of get to that feeling and that heart center in a fast way, in a moment. So when we're in that moment of challenge or anxiety or fear, we can take a pause, we can take a breath, and come back to our hearts. And one of the suggestions they have is to elicit that feeling, is to think of someone or something that you imagine embracing and evokes that feeling of love. So maybe you literally imagine hugging a loved one. Maybe you literally imagine what it is to hold your kitty or your dog or your child or whatever that is, something that literally evokes and kind of awakes that feeling of love in our hearts. So right now in this moment, I'm going to ask you to just take a breath and just get an image or an idea that elicits that for yourself. It should be very personal. It's different for all of us. So what is that kind of ignites that love? And breathing into that, just being open to that truth that you are the presence of love. And repeating that and saying that to your own self. I am the presence of love. And so this might be a practice to carry into the week, in a way to kind of stay connected to that in the midst of our busyness. And one of the expressions of love is a self-love. And I love in Colossians 3:14, it says, above all, clothe yourself in love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. So imagine that embrace that you give to yourself and that self-love. And we have an especially powerful gift this week as we move towards the winter solstice. It's Friday night or early Saturday morning, depending on how you think about it. It's 1:19 a.m. Saturday morning, so I think of it as Friday night. But so as we move closer, all of us here in the Seattle area, kind of as we get closer and then move into winter, nearly two-thirds of our 24 hours will be in darkness, right? So nearly two-thirds. So I've been reflecting on that and looking at it as this gift, because it's an opportunity to slow down and have inner time and reflection and to just pause and take a breath. And the image that was coming up for me this past week is the hermit, the archetype of the hermit in the tarot deck. And the hermit represents as this archetype for inter-reflection and introspection. Also the archetype of completion. And so the hermit invites us, our inner hermit, invites us to slow down and be quiet. And Angeles Arian, she writes about the hermit, and she says, you know, it's not that the hermit doesn't want to be around people or always wants to be alone, but is looking for that balance of the time needed to be alone for emotional, spiritual, physical renewal, and the time to be with others that is meaningful. And so that's our invitation as we move forward this week and further into the holidays. I know I love the holiday get-togethers and the meals, and I love walking around the shops and seeing the lights and going to hear music, and I'm just really savoring the quiet moments. One of my favorite things is to turn off all the lights and just have Christmas tree lights and the holiday lights up and just sit in the quiet in the dark. And so that's our invitation this week, is how do we find that balance between the two? And I was looking at this as well with our theme of Gen Z and the Zoomers, because one of the things, as Reverend Karen had shared when she was introducing it, is something that our Gen Z has brought forward more fully, is this idea and the importance of taking care of ourselves and our emotional, physical well-being and our self-care. And so I had been talking to different millennials and Gen Z members in our community and getting an idea of their perspective of what Generation Z brings us and some of the gifts. And there is a sense of openness, more kind of open to other cultures, again, because this is a generation that grew up with the internet. That's all they've ever known. And I was speaking to Taylor, one of our newest members, and he's actually a millennial, but he spends a lot of time with Gen Z. And he was noting, he said, for earlier generations, you might have had like one or two commentators or, major journalists on TV that most people listen to. And now the current generations hears thousands via podcasts and social media, YouTube videos. There's thousands of different voices. So it naturally creates more of this openness to other cultures, other ideas, much faster paced. We are in the information age. We're in the age of zettabytes. Does anybody know this? I didn't know this. Some people might have heard this, but we're in the age of zettabytes. And what the heck is a zettabyte? I had to actually look it up. Anyone want to guess? Something big, like one with a bunch of zeros. It's 1 trillion gigabytes. And so just for some context, in 2010, there were 2 zettabytes of data in the whole world. 2 zettabytes. And we are having an exponential increase. So in 2023, there were 120. So in the last 2 years, 90% of all the world's data has been generated and created. So when you feel overwhelmed, I had like a light bulb went off. I'm like, oh, there is a lot just coming in all the time. And so they estimate that in 2025, just next year, we're going to go up to 181 zettabytes. And by 2028, nearly 400 zettabytes. And just continually, exponentially increasing. Makes me want to run and close the lights and turn into the dark. So this is our Gen Z. Our Zoomers have grown up in this, though. This is they're used to it. It's the norm. And they also know they need to step away. So one of the things that I was looking at is, it became popular and kind of more known during kind of with the millennials is this idea of spiritual, not religious. Anybody heard that? And but it's become even more pronounced with our Zoomers. And so we talked a lot about this in ministerial school. And what does that actually mean? Because a lot of people define those terms in very different ways, religion and spirituality. And so my working definition right now, it changes continually as it does over time, is religion is a set of beliefs or a system of practices. Sometimes it's considered the external practices or study or conversation or discussion that helps kind of elicit or ignite the inner spiritual experience. Sometimes kind of religious experience is considered kind of more communal and spiritual more individual. But I was reading a couple of different researchers, and one, Deakin University, they were saying, I think we just had the questions all wrong. Because our questions were sort of like, are you Christian? Are you Muslim? Are you Islam? And when people would say no, when our millennials and now our Gen Z would say no, then it became, well, then you're not religious. But it's more that they've refused to be defined by rigid systems. Where earlier generations might have held that I am a Christian and these are the set of beliefs I believe in and I live by, a very defined structure, and there's nothing wrong with that, but that is kind of historically what it's been. And I'd say that many of the people in Unity, many of us are those people that don't like the rigid boundaries either. How many people draw from a number of different sources? Our Unity founders, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, drew from a lot of different spiritual resources. So that's not a new idea. And I think one of the terms that another research institute, Springtide, came up with is faith unbundled. This idea that it's kind of expanded and that we now have access to so much more. So we're able to find what is that truth for us? What is that truth that resonates for each person individually? And this young Gen Z, this I think encapsulates it so beautifully, kind of, and many of you, I'm guessing, might resonate. Because when asked, where is your spirituality or religion, where does it fall? And she said, I'm not Buddhist, I'm Christian. I pray every day, I meditate every day, and I do yoga. I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. And praying is something my grandmother taught me as well, to pray and be grateful, have gratitude. I like to pray and meditate and do this daily. And she goes on to say that she incorporates prayers with Mother Nature, the Christ, awakening her heart chakra and lifting her consciousness. So it is an expanded experience of the spiritual journey. And there's still a place for religion. It just comes in a different form, and we're in the midst of a major redefining during this time and this age. So I'd also asked Lucas, one of our new members, who's actually a millennial, but he's taught a lot of Gen Z, kind of his view. And he said he saw a lot of similarities between millennials and Gen Z because of just growing up and seeing and feeling tremendous challenge with climate change and inequality. But he said what he found is, for him, he sees this incredible optimism with Zoomers, this kind of commitment to live their values and carve out a future that they want to be in and see. And so I have asked one of our new members, Jack, to come up and share a little bit about his experience and what are some of the gifts he sees that his generation, Gen Z, brings. Jack.
Well, from that, I have a lot of jumping off points that I want to change what I had prepared, so I'm sorry if I'm long-winded. I think the greatest gift that Gen Z brings is the interconnectedness, which you touched on. I had a Facebook since I was 13. So I actually got grounded for it. It was 3 days before I was 13. I got grounded for 3 days, but anyway. So I've always had both an online and an in-person definition of friend. So I've had 600 friends on Facebook since high school, but then only a smaller group of what I call real, in-person friends. But through that, I was able to see a lot of ideas and the values of the people online. So instead of just having my group and my own values, I would see people that I didn't actually talk to in real life, but that they would post on Facebook, that they would post on Instagram, and I would get to understand kind of what makes them tick instead of just seeing from my perspective. So as I grew up, as a teenager, obviously, might not have understood that and valued the diversity there. But as I grew up, I started to understand that more. I started to understand that the different values that people held are equally valuable to the ones that I have, and they're equally valid. So all those different interpretations and all the content let me see all those ideas and explore them. And like Diane mentioned with YouTube, I've always been able to have thousands of TV channels. Instead of just having the interests that are broader and more popular, I was able to go into my niche interests and find community online through those. So it's almost pockets of different communities that I was a part of, and it wasn't necessarily one broader community. So with that content and with my own spiritual journey, I think TikTok was actually very instrumental into me coming in tune with my own spirituality. So I grew up very focused on the physical, on like very science-based understanding, and through TikTok, I got exposed to philosophies of Ram Dass and Alan Watts, and more of the metaphysical and the understanding and the acceptance of your own personal inner reality. So that naturally led me into more spiritual understanding. So exploring that, really understanding my own experience, going and sitting in a park and doing nothing, which would have been wild to me 3 years ago. So I think ironically to the interconnectedness there, that actually led to a feeling of both connectedness with everything in the world and also a disconnection from having an in-person community that I could identify with spiritually. I had one friend that I talked about spirituality with hours a day. And it was great, but it made me feel like I wanted a bigger community, which, coming back to the interconnectedness, I reached out to my 5th grade music teacher on Facebook from Cincinnati, who had given a speech about religion, and she's a member of Unity in Cincinnati. And so she gave me a bunch of different options and said, I go to Unity, and I looked it up, and we're here. And I happened to come on Easter, which all the themes of rebirth, and that was just in the interconnectedness, and I think the value of all the different religions. Because especially this year on Easter, it was bringing in resurrection themes from so many different communities, and I think that that really resonated with me, and I think that aspect of Unity resonates with a lot of people my age. For example, my partner Shiloh's little sister was talking about spirituality with me, and I brought up Unity, and that there's the openness, there's not the rigid definition like there is for more traditional systems. And lo and behold, there was one close to her in DC, and now she goes regularly to that. And I was able to go see her community and appreciate it. So there's that kind of ebb and flow of interconnectedness in online, and how that in my life has turned into in-person spiritual community. So I think Karen suggested that I talk about what I see for the future and what I see for Gen Z as they grow up and they continue. I was born in '97, so I'm right at the oldest edge of Gen Z. And I think one of the biggest things is that it's very easy to connect online. It's a click of the button to become friends. You can search and see different people's opinions, and it's a lot harder to do that in person now. And so I think there comes some disenfranchisement when you're young and you don't understand how to make those connections in real life that maybe are more rich, that are more diverse, and you have to accept that maybe there's some differences in how you think and how you understand, and that that's good, and that that challenges you. So I think Gen Z at this moment is very connected online, and there's some negative feelings of disconnection out in the world. And I think in the next 10 years, as Gen Z grows up, they'll realize that what they feel like they're missing is that connectedness in person. And I think that that's already starting. And I think I'm very lucky to have been able to find Seattle Unity on the first try. And so I think that future will lead to more pushes to have community in person, and more taking that diversity of ideas and allowing it to be in your own physical life. And so I think I'm personally optimistic. I think that that connectedness will come soon, and that it'll bring a wave of great change. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. So maybe if there wasn't any TikTok, we wouldn't have the gift of Jack's presence. Oh. So let us embrace what Gen Z is bringing forward more fully in terms of empathy and self-care and inclusivity and connection. And as we go forth this week, my invitation to you is to lean into the darkness as we move towards the winter solstice, and find a practice that centers you in your heart and brings us each back to love. That you know and you repeat and you affirm and you live and you embody that you are the very presence of love. And so I invite you to own that, breathe that, embody that, express that in the world in your own beautiful way. Blessings. So as our community guys are coming forward, we come now to that time to give of our gifts and our tithes and our love offerings. We have a multitude of ways to give. If you give online, you can do so via the website or via text. The number's 206-350-8448. Yes. And if you give electronically, there's little cards in the back of the pews or chairs. Oh, that was an old, whew. The back of the chairs. And there's a QR code to give, and there's also a blessing to repeat, and you can hold that if you give electronically, and of course, cash and checks. So I invite you to affirm with me the blessing of our offering. I give willingly, joyfully, and lovingly, knowing that God is the constant source of my supply. I give with graciousness and receive with gratitude. All right, so I want to give a shout out to those that are joining online. And this is just a few of the folks that are joining online. So Tammy from Cottage Grove, Oregon, Margaret from Corvallis, Louise from West Lynn, Diane from Northgate, Mary, Debbie, Susan, Mike, Janet, and Chris from Napa, California. Welcome, and thank you all for joining us online. And so let us put a final blessing on our offering as our prayer chaplains are coming forward. And so we give thanks for the generosity of this community and all that everyone gives. We see it returning each giver 1,000-fold. And we see it going forth to do the work of this community and out into the wider world. And for this awareness, we are grateful. And so we turn now to prayers for those that have requested prayer. And we hold in light and love for healing Joseph, Bob, and Tina, for guidance for Nola and Mike and Diane. Prayers of healing and wholeness for Susan, Steve, Shirley, and Rick. We hold for the very highest and best for Rebecca and Christopher, for Steve and Carol. We give thanks for guidance unfolding and lighting the way for Terry and Alexander, Larry and Dawn, and Scott, for healing and wholeness for Marcia. And we hold Dave in our prayers for grace as he is preparing and in process of crossing over. May there be grace and ease. in releasing into spirit. We hold his wife and loved ones in our hearts. May they feel the love and comfort that surrounds them. And anyone else you know in need of prayer or any place, I invite you to speak it now. And we know there is no distance in spirit or time. And so we give thanks for these prayers going forth and blessing all those they reach. And for this awareness, we are grateful. Amen. And so we do have prayer chaplains available to pray with you. If you have a prayer request, whether something you're carrying or a celebration, we invite you to find them over on the side here. Melissa and Shiloh. Shiloh's one of our new prayer chaplains, and so we invite you to come and join with her in prayer. And so now we join together in our prayer for protection. The light of God surrounds us. I am light. The love of God enfolds us. I am love. The power of God protects us. I am power. The presence of God watches over us. I am presence. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. That is the truth.
Let's sing one more closing song. This is All Is Well. It's really easy, even if it's your first time. And we like to hold hands on this one, but you don't have to. In unity, it's unity, so you get to do what you want. Oh, also upstairs, the men, they're hosting that breakfast, which is great. And I'm gonna lead some Christmas carols after the line is done and the food's there, we'll sing some carols. So see you up there. All is well.